I'm going to take the time to thank all you guys for watching this video, viewing these videos that I've been posting over the last few years. And as always, my desire is that you're blessed by these videos. I'm not trying to make a name for myself. I'm not using this platform to bash anybody or to be controversial for the sake of being controversial. But the goal is always to bring forth God's word, to bring forth a message that will resonate in our hearts and minds and soul, that would challenge us to be better people, better believers, better Christians, people that would consider God and stuff like that. Tonight, I want to do something a little bit different because on the cups of hearing great news this week, after some months of going through some stuff in my life and just, and I'll get straight to the point. 2024 is over, it's in the books. We got a few more days and then there's a brand new year. And I want to just focus on, and this is very interesting to me because in the beginning of 2024, like when any new year start, you have all these expectations and goals and stuff. You just don't know what the year is going to bring. You may think that you start that job in January and by the end of December you're still going to have that job, but you don't know where that job could be yanked from you or taken from you, or you could lose that job, or your position can be eliminated. You don't have that job, or you may have a health crisis or a relationship issue, whatever it is, right? I say that because I want to say this. This year, I've experienced some heartache. This year, I experienced some loss. And take it for what it is. When you look, we tend to undermine or minimize losing a job, which I found myself this past April 25th, around 2:30 p.m. I got the bad news that the job that I held for 11 and a half years was no longer going to be mine. My position was eliminated, and I just leave it like that. You know, um, so a job that, it's funny because I look at the history of everything, and back in October 2012, I was going through some other work issues at the time and some challenging times at that. I was working at a law firm from 2006 to 2011. Excuse me. I was working for a publishing company from 2006 to 2011 here in the Bronx. And it was a unique way how I got that job, and not to be super spiritual, but I'm going to just bring it out here. I had a dream that for years, even before this dream, for years, I used to walk down or ride the bus up a certain block in my neighborhood. And I always saw this building, always kind of looked like a junior high school or something, but I could never figure out what it was. It was like you always saw it in passing, but nobody never knew what it was. And this is from the time I was in elementary school, junior high school, high school. Every time I ride that bus, that BX13, I would see this building from the in the background, and it just always intrigued me. Who would ever know that seeing this building in the 80s and 90s, I would be working here and working in that building in 2006. So I worked for this publishing company, the H.W. Wilson Publishing Company. I worked there his last 5 years of his existence. It merged and then it was brought out and all that stuff like that. And I'm still cool to this day with some of these co-workers that I met at H.W. Wilson, the H.W. Wilson Company as they call it. But I had a dream one night that I was actually working there. I was not, in reality, I wasn't working at the time, but this is around 2005, and I had a dream that I was actually working there. Now, of course, the position that I was doing in the dream, I didn't wind up doing that position, but to make a long story short, I had a dream that I was working there, and then eventually I worked there. Now, it took about a year to get this job. I dropped off my resume in October 2005. They called me in January 2006. I couldn't take the job at the time because I was still in school and I didn't want to, stop going to school and then have issues paying money back. I didn't want to get into any issues with Pell or Grant, anything of that nature. So I continued, and they told me that they was basically, the job was mine. I had the interview, the job was mine. They just handed it to me, right? And I didn't even have experience. But the thing of it is that I couldn't take the job because I was committed to school. And again, the thing of it is, when I went on the interview, I had no idea, what was the schedule. And once they told me it was in the morning to afternoon, and it was going to be a conflict with my school, then I had to turn it down. But the lady told me, well, when you finish school, come back and we'll go over the process again. Now, in most cases, that when you turn down a job or whatever, they may move on to the next candidate, you know. But to make a long story short, I was finished with school. I reached out to the company. They said, we're not hiring right now, blah, blah, blah. So I thought I lost my opportunity. That was May 2006. Fast forward October 2006, a year to the date that I dropped off my resume is when I got hired officially. So it took a whole year to get there, but it just goes to show you these good stories, and this is why I tell people you just never know. Now, recently I had an interview with a company. I'm not going to give the company name. I'm not going to get into all that. Basically, I got the job after being unemployed for some months when I lost the job in April of 2024 this year. And I was late for the interview. There was issues with the train and stuff like that. But I called, let them know my situation. Got there like 20 minutes late. I said, man, I didn't know. I felt like, you know what? If I get it, I don't. Whatever it is, what it is. But I'm just going to press my way and just make an effort to do it and whatever. So the good news came this week, whatever. I'm not going to get too much into that. But what I'm saying is that, the process of getting to where I'm at now wasn't easy. And this takes me back to October 2012. October 2012, I was working with an agency in the city. It was a temp agency. Actually, I was working with them for quite a while. Then there were times when it wasn't work, so I was out of work for like the summer of 2012. Really nervous, really worried after I lost the job with the publishing company. They laid us off in the right way. It was a mass layoff and whatever. But in October 2012, I was assigned to work at a Pacific company for 1 week, for 7 days. That was the assignment for 7 days. I was assigned to work in this Midtown company for 7 days. That 7 days turned into 11 and a half years. And then eventually, unfortunately, this year, I lost that job. And this is not a bashing video. I'm not here to bash. I'm not here to, allow my anger to be known or my bitterness or anything of that nature. I understand. I've come to the conclusion that decisions have to be made. People have their feelings and thoughts towards certain things, and that's just the nature of the beast. Layoffs are a part of life. It happens. I may not agree with the way and the manner of which it happened, especially when you hear different stories and stuff like that. Then months later, you hear all sorts of rumors that you're like, what? And then I had an opportunity actually to come back to the company in July, but that was shot down. That was, they reneged and whatever. So and then the promises that was made, and then reaching out to people, and then being ghosted. So you could kind of I felt like I was kind of betrayed or abandoned just by the way the situation happened. And people think that, oh, you could just get laid off and you get another job that easy. It's not. It doesn't work like that. Not in today's economy. Not, especially as you get older. But I have a remedy, a solution for all that. I'll get into that in a minute. But the reality of it is that there are people that turn to drugs and alcohol when they get laid off, when they lose a job. Uh, they say that losing a job, getting laid off, is akin to losing a loved one. People really grieve behind because there's so much riding on. Not just paying your bills and how you're going to survive, and the mental gymnastics that you go through. Your reputation is taking a hit. How you're going to be perceived. How your family's going to look at you. Those who you take care, those who you provide for. Somebody told me, and I think sometimes when we lose a job, people can be so insensitive. They don't want to hear what we have to say. They don't want to hear us vent. They'll tell us, oh, you wasn't doing much anyway. You wasn't going nowhere anyway. That was a low-level job. But they don't realize that that low-level job was something that was provided, that God used to provide. I've said this in the past. Don't ever underestimate what God uses to provide. Sometimes in life, a person may lose a job, may have to take another job that may not pay them as much as they had before. But don't ever underestimate God's hand and how he's using things to bring forth provision in our lives. So that job that we're telling people, oh, they was too good for, or they wasn't going nowhere anyway, they were wasting their time. That was the means in which God was using to help that individual provide for themselves or their family, right? And one valuable lesson I've learned throughout my life is a job is a job. When you don't have a job, it makes a difference when you have a job. In other words, what I'm trying to say is when you don't have a job and there's no income coming in, or the income is not as much as it was before, that unemployment runs out, you're like, okay, you're almost at a point of desperation. So the emotional, the anxiety, the mental gymnastics, the fear that we have, what if and what may happen. And it taught me something, a few things. One, the solution to me is faith. I had to plug at it every day. I had to pray to God. I had to seek God as I'm filling out these applications, as I'm going to these interviews, the interviews I'm getting, and then getting close but no cigar. Jobs that I knew I was qualified for. You know, they decided to go with another candidate. Just the frustration. So when I finally got the last interview, I was like, whatever. I'm not even excited. I'm only going to get excited when I'm walking through that door the first day and say, hey, or you get that offer letter to say, hey, we want you aboard, right? So all that stuff that you go through, people don't understand. You know what? A lot of times people never got laid off. That's the problem. A lot of times we tend to judge people, but never was really in their shoes. It's easy to say something from the outside looking in. But all in all, why I never went on a video tirade or social media tirade like athletes or entertainers bashing the company that they felt let them down or betrayed them or whatever. And I'll say this, you know, I think the thing that hurts the most is two things. One is the way the layoff took place. And I remember that week, that week that I got laid off, that whole week just felt off. It just felt ominous. It just felt like, there were some things that was taken up, that was going on, and I'm not gonna, again, this is not a video to put people on blast or anything of that nature. I'm confident that whatever the real truth is and whatever the situation is, things will come in, things will play out as time goes on. Sometimes we want instant gratification, we want instant justice. Sometimes justice may come years later or at a certain time. And, so I just felt that whole week was off. And I remember I was talking to a young lady at work. We was talking for about a good 10 minutes. And after I finished talking to her, I was about a half hour away from going on my lunch break that Thursday, April 25th. And I remember just praying. Like I just I felt like when you eat and you're so stuffed, but you're trying to force yourself to eat and it's just not working. I just felt at my end wits. I just felt like, you know, the stuff that I was going through, the stuff that I experienced and whatever. And then I just prayed, and I must have prayed about an hour before I got the call, right? Got the call to go to the headquarters, hear the news, whatever. Within 5 or 6 minutes, I'm out of the door, dismissive. They gave me a dismissive answer, so forth, and the likes. And then the thing that hurt me at first was when I got let go at the headquarters and tried to go back upstairs to retrieve my belongings and say my final goodbyes. I could not go back upstairs. They said it was a policy, and I said, you know what, Earl, you don't want to rock the boat. You're already in a conundrum. You don't want to rock the boat. Just take the L and keep it pushing. And then it dawned on me. I don't want my coworkers to. I don't want their last image of me to be that of sadness or loss. You know, in spite of what the truth is or what may happen or whatever it is or whatever. I'm not. To me, at this point, I don't really care because I feel like most people may have not. I'll say this: most people may not have had my best interest in mind. Most people probably don't even care for my success. It is what it is. People smile in your face all the time. They speak things, they say things. But I've learned, not only in this situation, but throughout life, that you don't go by what people say. Actions speak louder than words. You go by what people do. Anybody could sell you a story. Anybody could sell you something. But are they willing to make it come into fruition? Right? So with all that being said, the good thing about it is that while the year or this situation happened this year, and it left me with a lot of questions and it kind of derailed me a little bit from a financial standpoint, it increased my faith. I had to go with God every day. I mean, the questions that I have. What did I do wrong? What really happened? Why did I not succeed at this place? 11 and a half years. Why was it so topsy turvy? Why was it such an uphill battle? Now don't get it twisted. There were some wonderful moments there. There were some wonderful times there. I met some wonderful people. I embraced in many conversations. There were many opportunities to meet people, and they were and stuff like that. So there were some good times, but yet you have the good, you have the bad. You got to take them both, and then you have the facts. Now, I'm singing the facts of life thing, but it is what it is, and you know. Is there some bitterness still there on my part? Is there some frustration, some anger, some disappointment? Yes, no doubt. And it's going to be there. Even if you get a new job or not, it's going to be there because the way things went down. And I always felt like with me that I always gave my best, and it was always straightforward. And I feel that if I'm contributing, if I'm bringing contributions like that, I want it to be done in return. But sometimes you can treat somebody a certain way, they may not treat you like that in return. So just to kind of gather my thoughts here. So the so when I got laid off and couldn't go back upstairs and say my final goodbyes and couldn't go out in a more better fashion, it leaves a taste in my mouth, a foul taste, a nasty taste in my mouth. Definitely, no doubt. But you know, we don't always get what we want. Things will always work out the way it wants to. We want to. And I think another thing that hurt me is expectations. You have expectations. You really do. I was there for 11 and a half years. That meant something. That was the longest job I ever had. That was the longest tenured job I ever had. Other jobs I had 5 years, 4 years, 3 years. This was the longest job I ever had in my life. And I was more of a, anyway, I don't want to get into that outsource stuff, but it was the longest job I had, and it meant a lot to me. I grew a lot from that time. I've experienced a lot. I felt like I still had more legs to go and more room to grow and more to contribute. But whether it was God that closed the door, whether it was the devil that closed the door, whether it's something that I did or whatever the situation was, I look at it like this: no matter what it is, if God closes the door, then He's going to open the door, because the Word of God says this: God doesn't go against His will. The Bible says, if a man doesn't work, neither shall he eat. Okay? If the devil has something to do with it, or myself, it teaches me that even if I fall, see, we judge a man by how he falls. What we should do is judge a man how he gets up, how he rebounds. You know, and in spite of what happened, I'm able to go forward now. I got good news. Things seem like it's kind of running in a certain direction for me, and I think I'm just getting started. And it's funny because I ended the new year, or I ended this year rather, on a good note so far. We got 3 more days left, so let's see what the Lord will bring. So next year, God willing, the beginning of the next year, I'm going to be stepping into something new. I don't know what to expect as always. All I know, I expect to go somewhere and give my all, give my best, and contribute. And I'm not even going to get into what kind of job it is or whatever, because people have their little opinions. And you know what? Look, it's a job. That's the way I look at it. I'm looking for God to, just like He did with the place I was at before, how he multiplied 7 days and made it turn into 11 and a half years. Now, I'm not surprised that I got laid off. I mean, I think the handwriting was on the wall in some aspects. And to teach somebody going forward is this: I'm not saying that whenever you have issues and trouble that it's always a sign to run, but it is a sign to recognize what's going on and to try to ponder in which direction you need to go with your life, what decisions that need to be made. Because I think, again, we think that every time there's a sign of trouble, we think that it's time to quit or throw in the towel. But God may be using that trouble. God may be using that to stir us up. There are situations in the Bible, there are situations in life where people unfortunately had to go through some rough spots in order to get to the place God wanted them to be. And again, God is allowing these storms and these rough spots in our life to increase our faith, either to increase our faith in Him or to bring us to faith in Christ. Because one thing about, there was a layoff or anything that you go through, you're gonna learn three things. You're gonna learn about God, you're gonna learn about yourself, and you're gonna learn about other people. You're gonna learn who's gonna be there for you, who's not gonna be there for you, who's gonna reach out to you, who's gonna show you support, who's gonna cut you off, so forth and the like. You're gonna find out all this, you know. And it was rough because for the few months that I was on that I was let go. I mean, I was unemployed, and and I'll say this as an encouragement. I made less money, of course, being unemployed, but you know what? Bills still got paid. Food was on my table. Clothes was on my back. I didn't have to go leave out my house or nothing like that. I was good. I was still taking care of business with less money. And it kind of reminds me of what God's word says, that he never seen the writer says he never seen the righteous forsaken or his seed begging for bread. I didn't have to beg for food. I didn't have to beg for money. I wasn't out there destitute. Even though I made less money, but God's hand of provision was on my life. And it taught me some lessons. It taught me about faith and how that sometimes we tend to forget about, okay, because I've been laid off a few times in my life. I've been out of work a few times in my life for various reasons. But God always came through. God always provided. This time it hit me different because even though I wasn't surprised, I was shocked. And I think that surprise and shock can be two different meanings. Not surprised because, okay, I know who I am and what my experience was and what I went through and stuff like that. And I was shocked because I didn't see it coming. So if that makes sense, it just kind of happened like from behind. And it's rough because you feel in your heart and your mind you contributed well, you made the right contributions, you did all the things you could do. I tell people this, man, like the legacy that I ever want to leave with any job that I left is there's a saying that goes like this: don't leave the place the same way you came. Don't leave the place the same way you started. See, to me, and maybe some of these people that I worked with in the past may not never realize this, but I try to show it in my work. I try to show it in my actions and my commitment and my contributions. I was more than just a guy walking around doing a job just to get a paycheck. I respected my coworkers. I respected, relationships. I wanted to bring something different to the table. I wanted the people to see not only was I reliable and I was committed, but I'm here to work with you. We're here for each other. We work 40, 50 hours a week or whatever. We see each other more than we probably see our families. We work in 5 to 6 days a week. So 11 years, 12 years, 15 years is a long time, 20 years. We don't take those relationships for granted. We're actually building relationships. We don't, a lot of times we come from a place of shallowness when it comes to workplace relationships, but I think that we have to come from a place of authenticity to understand what God may want to do. And I'm not going to get into all what I think or what I know in regards to workplace relationships, but that's just what it is. I want people to recognize that I contributed well, I worked hard, I was committed, I was reliable, I was far from perfect. I had my ways, I had my moments, but I don't want to be defined by my bad moments. I want to be defined by overall, because I could have done something once or twice wrong, but done 80%, 85, 90% of the things I did was right, you know? And not only that, there were times when they needed an ear, they needed somebody to vent to. I could start pulling up names if I want to, but I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to put nobody on the spot. You know who you are. And these people will go through stuff personally in their families, in their homes, or whatever, just issues that they're having with other people. And I was just that ear to hear, that ear to lend, listening to them vent. And if I could offer advice or whatever, fine. If I couldn't, then I'd go home and pray for them, or try to witness the gospel to them or whatever, preach the gospel to them or whatever, or just give them a word of encouragement. Yeah, because again, I'm the type of man, whenever I engage people, I want a sense of authenticity. I don't believe in shallow stuff. I mean, yes, relationships vary. You're going to be closer to family members probably than co-workers. Sometimes you're closer to your co-worker than your family, your outside friends or whatever. But I don't take any relationship for granted. So, that's what I wanted. That's what I want to be remembered. And so Anyway, so get even neat. So that's just what I want to leave with on that note. But yeah, it was hard. It was rough. There were times where I felt like I was alone. I felt like God was silent. Nobody was reaching out to me. Promises that was made, like I said, in July, there was a situation where I could have potentially came back to the company, but the outsourced company that is, and but they reneged and gave me excuses, and I just left it alone. And there were times I didn't know what was going to happen, but I had to keep plugging at it. I had to keep praying. I had to keep seeking God. I had to keep. And one thing about faith is this: you could say, God bless me with a job or bless me with healing, but if you're not doing the things that's necessary that needs to be done, you know, if I need a job, I got to apply. So as you apply for a job, you're going to get interviews. You may not get hired the first few interviews. It may take 6 or 7 interviews before you actually get hired and offered a job. You know, um, so the reality of it is, all I can tell people going forward is that we don't want to ever minimize somebody's hurt and suffering when they're going through a layoff, because it can affect them just like any loss of life. And the challenge is this, is that you have to keep plugging at God. You got to keep praying. You got to have faith. You got to trust. And even where I'm starting at now, I don't know how things are going to work out. Nobody knows. We don't know the future. But even things don't work out to my liking, even if my expectations are not met, maybe God may surprise me and may exceed my expectations that I have. Who knows? But the reality of it is, it's really about faith. The Bible says this: all things work together for the good to those who love God and according to his purpose. Yeah, things may not have worked out to my expectations on my last job that I had for 11 and a half years. But who to say that it won't work out in a different way down the road, you know? But yeah, there's still some issues of, I guess you could say, animosity, some ill will. Felt like I was betrayed, felt like I was done wrong. And I have the right to feel that way. But again, I'm not going to throw shade at nobody. I'm not going to bash nobody. I'm better than that. I'm bigger than that. There's no need to do all that at this junction. Whatever the truth is, or whatever went down, or whatever the situation was, what led to what, rumors was said, lies was spoken. And I'm not going to get into all that because I don't want this to be controversial. Because I know there's some of you guys on my Facebook page, which whatever, it is what it is. You know how I feel about you guys anyway. If you know, you know. It's nothing but love. But the thing of it is that I had to learn a lot through this process, and it caused me to look at work a little bit different going forward. You know, it just caused me. It just taught me how to look at work and how to develop a better mentality to talk towards work, and to be more proactive with things, not just sit around and say, oh yeah, God's gonna fix it. No, be more proactive. If certain things are wrong, it needs to be addressed. If certain things don't get better, then maybe that's a sign to seek God for wisdom and what direction I need to take with my life going forward. But this whole process is a faith walk, and it just kind of increased my faith more and more. And yes, there's some disappointment. Yeah, there's some letdown, and whatever. I just hope that my contributions was well received. I hope that one day I will get my just due. But it is what it is. And with that being said, that's my challenge. It's not a challenge. It's more of a teaching going forward, because you don't know. We don't know what 2025 is going to bring. And all I'm saying is that if I would have, ran to drugs or alcohol, because like I said, people lose a job and they get caught on drugs and substance and addictions, and we know the divorce and all the stuff that comes in. People lose their mind when they lose their job. But I will also say this: don't allow your job, don't allow what you do for a living to be your overall sum of identity. Your purpose and meaning should be found in God and God alone. Now, God uses our job to provide, but if he takes away that provision, or he has another means for provision, we need to trust him nonetheless, and know that even if we don't have that job that we had for so many years anymore, it doesn't mean our life is over. It doesn't mean it's the end. So I just, my challenge, my faith, I mean, my faith, my prayer is that whatever you go through the remainder of this year or next year, that you walk by faith and not by sight. I'm just hoping for good things. And with that being said, this is not to bash nobody or call nobody out, put nobody on the spot. It is what it is. God sees everything. God brings things to light, and that includes stuff that I've done. So, with that being said, you know how it works. I see you guys and girls on the next ones. If I don't do another video before the year's out, I'll see you in the next year. Happy New Year.